So thanks for being here. My name is Michael Arfken. I'm an associate professor of psychology at the University of Prince Edward Island. I'm also the chair of the Canadian Association University Teachers Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee. And so I'd like to talk about the relationship between academic freedom or some implications that academic freedom has for democratic workplace or workplace democracy. So I want to begin by, I'm going to take a leap here. I'm going to assume that many of us are protected by academic freedom as we are academics. If we are not, we went through an education system where we benefited from the fact that our instructors were, for the most part, hopefully, protected by academic freedom. So academic freedom does have a significant impact on post-secondary education. And obviously, there's some differences between Canada and the US that I'll speak to in a little bit, but I just want to give a very basic overview. Academic freedom covers what are referred to as the four pillars. So there's teaching, research, intramural expression, extramural expression. So obviously, research, being able to research the things that you want to without fear of institutional censorship. The same with teaching. Intramural expression refers to our ability to participate in the governance of our workplaces and to be able to critique our institutions. If you work at BMO and walk in one day and say, I hate BMO, you can be fired. If you do the same thing at our post-secondary institutions, you should have protections because we should be able to critique these institutions. It's part of the work that we do. And academic freedom is essential for us to do that sort of work. I want to show two attempts to make sense of academic freedom, one in the US context and one in the Canadian context. So the AAUP, American Association of University Professors, institutions of higher education are conducted for the common good and not to further the interests of either the individual teacher or the institution as a whole. The common good depends upon the free search for truth and its free exposition. So the idea here is that we should be able to engage on academic matters without interference by the state, without succumbing to market pressures. I think some of us are laughing because those are there. But the thing I really wanted to stress in this definition is the common good, and how rhetorically, one of the ways, and in fact, one of the primary political ways that we defend academic freedom is talk about the role that we as academics play in the common good. The Canadian Association of University Teachers has a similar statement around this. Post-secondary education institutions serve the common good of society through searching for and disseminating knowledge and understanding, and through fostering independent thinking and expression in academic staff and students. Robust democracies require no less. These ends cannot be achieved without academic freedom. So there's a lot of rhetoric around the relationship between academic freedom and the fact that academic freedom is a requisite for a democratic society. The American scholar, one thing I want to make sure, there is a distinction in academic freedom in the US versus Canada. In Canada, academic freedom is largely a negotiated labor right. So it's something that we negotiate through our collective agreements. Your academic freedom looks different at your institution, depending on the collective agreement that you have versus other institutions. There's very few statutory protections for academic freedom in Canada. There are recent exceptions to that. In the US, academic freedom is largely defended on First Amendment grounds. So it's a very different sort of context for making sense of academic freedom, and that has implications, as we'll see, for workplace democracy. Oh, sorry. I want to identify one tension that's inherent in academic freedom, according to Robert Post, the American scholar of academic freedom. Universities cannot expand knowledge of faculty members, merely reproduce already existing knowledge. There is this tension built into the core of academic freedom between, on the one hand, expanding the frontiers of existing knowledge, and on the other, competently exemplifying existing disciplinary standards. This tension is persistent and without resolution. One of the biggest challenges I've found in engaging with members at member associations on academic freedom is it's often viewed in this sort of libertarian framework where I'm an academic, so now I can just do whatever the hell I want. And that can be extremely frustrating. Academic freedom is more tied to a discipline and to disciplinary competence. And so the idea is that our discipline should ground the production of knowledge. But at the same time, there's this tension in terms of expanding beyond the discipline and adhering to disciplinary standards. And this is a tension that's inherent in academic freedom. Another tension, and this gets back to the relationship between academic freedom and democracy, is the relationship between legitimacy, democratic legitimacy, and democratic competence. So democratic legitimacy is the idea that if we are to call ourselves a democratic society, everyone should have the ability and the opportunity to participate in decisions being made within that society. So we legitimize democracy by ensuring that everyone has a role to play in it. By the same token, competency says that we have to leave room for expertise, and that these decisions that are being made more generally should be informed decisions. And so there's this tension between everyone participating in these decisions, but also recognizing that some people have greater expertise in particular areas, having gone through advanced schooling and things of that nature. So there's this tension that Robert Post identifies between democratic legitimacy and democratic competence. What I want to point to here is that in our defense of academic freedom, we've largely done it on political and epistemological grounds. So we've looked at it in terms of the structure of democracy, the role that academics play with the common good, and the role that expertise plays in this whole situation. And I want to suggest that this may be a limitation, and we may need to change the way that we look at academic freedom as we move forward. What I want to suggest is as an alternative, instead of looking at it strictly politically, that we do essentially what's referred to as a class analysis. What role do academics actually play within a class stratified society? When we do this, we start to look at academic freedom, not necessarily in terms of its relationship to the common good and democracy, but in terms of professionalization. How have we carved out a unique spot for ourselves within capitalism, essentially? How have we essentially created a monopoly and prevented people from coming in, all in the name of expertise, but nonetheless creating a very unique situation and organization of our society? So what I want to do is shift attention from what we know and expertise, epistemology, to who we are as workers and our relationship with being professionals within this society. I will say one thing that we've struggled with in labor organizing, in particular, in post-secondary academic or post-secondary sector, is convincing academics that they're actually workers. And in fact, they will believe, if you're in collective bargaining, they will be workers for the duration of the collective bargaining. And once you sign that agreement, doors close and people are back to doing their work. That's not very sustainable, is what I would like to suggest. And it's actually created some of the problems that we need to engage on. When we talk about professionalization, we're talking professionalization emerged in this distinction between mental and manual labor. Professionalization, according to Friedson, is an organizational logic distinct from market competition and firm efficiency. So we have professions that are marked by expertise and highly skilled labor that are distinct from, that create this organizational structure to assume a certain level of occupational autonomy. And so the autonomy is supposed to be outside of the influence of the firm or bureaucracy or market competition. Now, this is an ideal type sort of analysis. That's why I put the overlap, is that while we may never be free of these forces, that is the aim is to extract ourselves from the forces to the extent that that's possible. We've generally framed this as we need to do this because we're really important for democracy. That has some blowback effects for other people who maybe feel that they're not that they're not viewed as being as important for democracy. And some of you may have seen this in terms of, I don't know, right-wing populism and the political situation that we find ourselves in today. So professionalization is a unique form of the organization of labor, and it's the mechanism that we've used to assume a certain level of occupational autonomy. My concern here is that professionalization's dependence on expertise or epistemology to secure occupational autonomy leads us to embrace a restrictive notion of democracy and a technocratic understanding of the common good. It's not just that we're defending democracy, we're defending a democracy where there's some people that have protections and other people that don't. And we have to constantly legitimize that. In this framework, academic freedom becomes, in a sense, a certain form of ideology, a way of patrolling the boundaries of occupational autonomy, and a way of saying, we deserve this and you don't. And that, I would argue, has created a political situation that is increasingly untenable and increasingly makes it difficult to defend post-secondary education. So while expertise initially insulated academics from the sort of I can never pronounce this word. Sweet. Proletarianization that decimated workers in other sectors, it has also increasingly fanned the flames of right-wing populism. So we did, in the emergence of this distinction between mental and manual labor, we did use professionalization to argue for a level of occupational autonomy. But at the same time, a lot of people were left out of that. And what you see in contemporary rhetoric is the liberal elite, the ivory tower, things of that nature. And it becomes increasingly hard to defend academic freedom in that context. So what I'm arguing for is a shift. And this shift is towards not defending it in terms of our unique expertise and our ability and our importance as academics for democracy, but a more expansive understanding of democracy. Recognize that workers in all sectors should play a role in the governance of their workplaces. And so in this framework, and in particular of those four pillars, intramural expression, our ability to participate in the governance of our workplaces and critique our employers should not be the unique possession of academics. It should be something that we're fighting for workers in all sectors. What I would suggest is this signals greater solidarity between academics and the larger labor movement at a particularly pivotal point in our political life. So this is a picture of the CAT Defense Fund coming to our strike a few years ago. So academics from all over supporting other academics. What I would suggest is that I have other pictures. I couldn't find the ones where CUPE was there, where PSAC was there. Like that, everyone showed up, and it was fantastic. So the struggle over academic freedom is not simply being fought in the context of these political economic struggles. It is part of these very struggles. It's not just that we're fighting for academic freedom against this background of politics. We are part of that struggle, and we fail to recognize that at our peril. So academic freedom, what I would argue, is that academic freedom is what workplace democracy looks like in the post-secondary sector. And we need to start talking about it in those ways and not talk about how we're special and we should have these unique occupational privileges. We need to start talking about how workers in all sectors should play a role in the governance of their institutions. To do this, and I work at CAUT. I play a role in CAUT, Canadian Association of University Teachers. And one of the struggles we have in terms of our advocacy efforts is this distinction between guild privilege and working class struggles. And so we need to get over our focus on guild privilege, and we need to start being a part of working class struggles in every sector. And that, to me, is how we protect post-secondary education, rather than carving out a unique space for us. So academic freedom is the form that workplace democracy takes in the post-secondary sector. And enlarged commitment to democracy entails the recognition that all workers should be able to participate in the governance of their workplaces. And for me, that is what we need to defend academic freedom and, by extension, post-secondary education going forward. Thank you very much.